was at a point in my life where I was craving change. Every day was starting to feel the same. I would get up, work a little, hike, and maybe host a social gathering and then repeat. I thought about going back to school, and I was left with the question of what am I really passionate enough about? I toyed with the idea of psychology, but then I remembered who I was. I applied for the anthropology program and was accepted at the local university, but I had plenty of winter travel planned prior. During my trip to Thailand, my adventurous spirit got the best of me, and I questioned everything. What would it take just to jump right into the field and have fun? Why did I really want to go back? To write essays? No, to change history. I googled volunteer archaeological digs and was prepared to see a long list of scholastic requirements. The first one that came up was on the Find a Dig website, and it was for Khirbet el Mistera. This is right outside of Jericho on the Palestinian side of Israel. For those of you who don't know your history, that's where Joshua, my name, fought the Battle of Jericho. And lo and behold, absolutely zero experience required to join the dig. Train on site. It was meant to be. The story of Jericho is interesting because there's been very little archaeological evidence that can validate the story. And as we all know, the Ark of the Covenant, which undoubtedly helped them win the legendary battle, still hasn't been found to this day. A prime chance to really change history. However, for the true of faith, there's no question to its accuracy, and I wanted to help prove history one way or the other. I submitted my wordy and ecstatic application to Ralph Hawkins, the leader of the Jordan Valley excavation project, and was euphoric when I was given the approval to join. The team consisted of a few students from the university and a plethora of volunteers from across the globe, from all fields of study and careers. Every day we would get up at 3 a.m. before sunrise, have a quick breakfast, and then head out on a long shuttle ride to the site. We propped up a canvas to protect us from the searing midday heat, which felt like it was pushing into the 40s. I started out in my full gear, with barely any skin showing, and by the end I was in a t-shirt and shorts, allowing the sun to scorch away, but to the benefit of not overheating. The ground was hard as stone, and our delicate tools for excavation quickly felt irrelevant as we swapped out and hammered away with pickaxes. The worst part of the day though, shaking the removed dirt through sieves to uncover any smaller objects that we may have missed. The clouds of dust enveloped whoever was on rotation that day. While there was no major historical revelations on year one with the dig, it is a multi-year project. We did find what we believe to be corrals, some fragments of pottery, animal bones, snail shells, and a live deathstalker scorpion, one of the most deadly in the world. They're always looking for more volunteers, so if it's your jam, don't hesitate to sign up. The dig, however, was smack dab right in the middle of my Israel trip. I wanted to get the full experience and see the rest of the country as well. The best way to explore Israel from major departure locations like Jerusalem and Tel Aviv is with the Abraham Hostel tours. You don't have to be staying with them to sign up, and their guides were excellent and the costs incredibly low. Car rentals and, God forbid, private drivers are insanely expensive in the country. Plus, the tour company has an amazing Judean desert day trip. Right along the bank of the Dead Sea, the fortress at Masada was built by Herod the Great. It was a site for a Jewish stronghold against Rome in 68 AD. You can climb by foot for over an hour or take the cable car to this mountaintop ruin. You'll get to see giant dugouts called cisterns which held rainwater in the dry season, ancient swimming pools, and all the typical highlights. Afterwards, we cruised around the desert in a jeep for a while. We popped over to the Greek Orthodox Marsaba Monastery in the Kidron Valley, took a midday soak at the ancient Ein Prat water spring, but more importantly, spent the afternoon exploring the Ein Gedi Reserve. This was a popular desert gem as it has two spring-fed streams with water year-round. It's the biggest oasis in Israel, and it has waterfalls to add to its allure. It's a welcome freshwater site amidst all of the sand. The water at the Dead Sea is decidedly not drinkable. Even the slightest scratch in your skin will burn with the fire of 1,000 souls as you take a dip. And I was skeptical when people told me that you'd be virtually unsinkable, but lo and behold, as you go farther out, you become increasingly buoyant due to the high salinity content. The level of the Dead Sea is sometimes perceived as the life force of Israel, and it's been evaporating at an alarming rate. Talks of digging a canal all the way from the Red Sea in the south to refill it have been going on for years. Eilat, Israel's southernmost city, is a calm destination right on the Red Sea. It's famous for its coral beach reserve, desert hiking, and dolphin swimming, but for most tourists it's not worth the trek all the way south unless you're already there from a cruise ship. Most of the country is covered by desert and is seemingly uninhabitable. Heading back north, the two major stops were for photos at the Ramon Crater and Timna Park. The park was a massive hotspot for copper mining as far back as 4500 BC. The entire site is an incredible spot to see the evidence of water erosion in the sandstone, the arches, Solomon's pillars, and the giant mushroom rock, just like I saw in Egypt. The park also features an artificial lake and has been a location for concerts, cliff climbing events, and movie sets. Approaching Jerusalem, the Valley Vila was the location where David defeated the giant Goliath. The story goes that the fearless David picked up 5 stones from the nearby river and using only his slingshot managed to score a lucky shot and knock him out and won the war. This is a scene I absolutely had to retrace, and it was euphoric being at the cliffside for sunrise over the valley. Even if that meant napping in my car in the dark and getting caught by a military patrol. Nearby, there are a number of other smaller archaeological sites, but the Adullam Grove Nature Reserve and the Big Guvrian Caves are my personal favorites. It's a great spot to see a dovecot. Raising doves was a significant part of the economy in the Judean lowlands. They were used for rituals and their dung as fertilizer. While richer citizens would sacrifice larger animals, it was the dove that most commoners would burn on the altar. Bethlehem, known for being Jesus' birth location, is in the state of Palestine. Now, the country is divided by what is known as the Israeli West Bank Barrier. It's built along the Green Line. It's a hotly contested barrier built by Israelis that is called a terrorism prevention measure by one and a racial segregation line by others. Within the West Bank, there are portions of Palestine controlled by the Israeli government and also areas which are literally illegal for non-Palestinians to enter. Tourists, however, are usually permitted to travel freely at their own discretion. Banksy, that notable graffiti artist and political activist, has done a number of murals around Bethlehem. At no point did I feel particularly unsafe, but it was deeply troubling to see the animosity firsthand. The Church of Nativity is the spot to be in Bethlehem. It's believed to be the exact birthplace of Jesus, and it's possible to enter and put your hand on that particular magical spot. Contrary to popular belief, Jesus likely wasn't born in a manger, but in a guest room of a relative's home for the census. The truth may be permanently lost in translation of a single word. And I thought it was rather suiting to take a short trip farther east to Qasr El Yahud, where John baptized Jesus. But if you're uncomfortable being in the West Bank on the border of Jordan, head farther north to Yardenit. That's where I went. It's the alternative site right on the Sea of Galilee. While both Protestants and Catholics do get baptized, only Catholics believe it's mandatory. On the north side of the sea, the iconic Mount of Beatitude sits overlooking the valley. This is where Jesus delivered the Sermon on the Mount. It's next to the biblical city of Capernaum, which once housed up to 1,500 people. It's where Jesus essentially hung out, provided his teachings, performed miracles like walking on water, providing huge catches of fish, and calming storms. I decided to get a little creative and relive some biblical history. I headed to Kfar Cana, where Jesus turned water into wine, bought my own bottle, and suited up on my very own donkey just east of town at Kfar Kadem, and headed into Nazareth, just like Jesus did. Well, we didn't get quite that far. It was still fun to dress the part and wear some traditional clothing. Nazareth houses the Basilica of the Annunciation, built over the top of the site of Mary's home, where the Archangel Gabriel told her that she would bear the Son of God. It's known for being the town where Jesus spent most of his youth. Church of the Transfiguration on Mount Tabor is another nearby must-stop, and is the spot where Jesus begins to shine with radiant light and is confirmed by a voice in the sky to indeed be God's Son, removing any doubt. Just south of the city is the apocalyptic ruins of Megiddo. 34 battles were waged here, and it was an important travel and political hub throughout history. Christians believe this to be the future site where the final battle will be fought between good and evil. Jerusalem is the focal point of 3 of the world's major religions, Judaism, Islam, and Christianity. Ownership of the city has been claimed by both Israel and Palestine. Skirmishes aren't unheard of to this day. And while I was there was even an attack at the Damascus Gate. We decided to hang out on the roof of our hotel listening to the news unfold, and luckily everything was alright. As a foreigner, it was pretty easy to feel the tension in the air. Military service is even mandatory for Israeli citizens over the age of 18. To decompress a little bit, we took a stroll a bit farther out of town at Machne Yehuda Market. It boasts over 250 vendors flaunting everything from spices to fresh fruit. And make sure to buy some olive oil. Israelis consume over 2.5 kilograms of the stuff annually. The religious quarters of the old city are amazing to walk through. Vendors are flaunting their goods in Aladdin-style shops, and history is bursting out of every corner. For me, though, there were 10 incredibly important things to do in this old city. First was walking the Via Dolorosa. This was the path that Jesus took en route to his crucifixion. Second, visiting the Islamic shrine Dome of the Rock on Temple Mount. Only Muslims are permitted to enter for political, security, and religious reasons. Third, throwing on a kippah to touch the Jewish Western Wall. You'll find countless prayer papers crammed into the cracks. It was built by Herod the Great, and the tunnel tours will take you to the closest spot that Jews are permitted to pray to the Holy of the Holies. Want to see where Jesus was buried? That will all depend on who's asking. Catholics will head to the very elaborate and well-decorated Church of the Holy Sepulchre. Protestants will head to the more humble and Buddhist-feeling Garden Tomb. Fifth, the 3,000-year-old Jewish graveyard at the Mount of Olives. It houses over 150,000 graves and will run you over $20,000 for your own plot. Sixth, the Chapel of Ascension, where Jesus is believed to have ascended to heaven after his resurrection. 7. Gethsemane, where Mary was buried and where Judas betrayed Jesus by identifying him with a kiss to the authorities. 8. The City of David, Tower of David, and King David's tomb. 9. A bar mitzvah, the coming-of-age ceremony for a 13-year-old Jewish boy. And 10. For the museum side of things, the Holocaust Museum, and then the Israel Museum. It houses the fragments of the Dead Sea Scrolls in its Shrine of the Book. The Dead Sea Scrolls are the unadulterated copies of some of the original Jewish biblical manuscripts. It was time to end the trip with a little bit of beauty and luxury. I made my way to the Rosh Hanikra grottos on the border with Lebanon. The white chalk cliff faces and alcoves reminded me of something straight out of Peter Pan. The Baha'i terraces at the Hanging Gardens of Haifa looked like a resort. The Baha'i believe in a unification of the human race and our beliefs. This even includes a harmony between science and religion. I felt like it was a really enlightened philosophy and something that Israel desperately needs more of. I took a short stroll up Mount Carmel for a view of the valley and began my beach day. The entire Mediterranean coast is littered with one gorgeous beach after the next. It felt like I wasn't even in the same country anymore. The rolling sand dunes were placed with lush green oceanside foliage. More impressive works of Herod the Great can be found at the ruins of Caesarea. It was built around 20 BC and was once a thriving port city. If you've already been to Italy, it will feel a little lackluster there. Tel Aviv really is much like any other big city. Much of it modernized, including the old seaport of Jaffa. Even the Carmel Market feels nothing like Jerusalem and much more contemporary. The concept of religion in Tel Aviv feels virtually non-existent as you roam the touristy streets. Notably the boutique shopping district of Neve Zedek, or when you head to the Yemenite quarter to try some exotic meat soups. Israel truly is a country of strong juxtapositions, and the allure of uncovering pivotal keys to our history will continue to attract adventurers for centuries, just as it did